Hey, I'm Nick DiMatteo, and welcome to Music is Not a Genre, the interview edition. Each week I discuss music, I kind of give you my take on it. I connect it to things. I connect all music to other music. I break down barriers. I expose myths and all that kind of stuff that hopefully if you've been following along, you know about. And if you haven't been following along, you know that this is the second, only the second in this interview edition. And we'll talk more about that later. Thank you, first of all, for subscribing and clicking and sharing and for being a Patreon patron and anything else that you do to make the connection here. I know I appreciate it. I hope you love being part of this family as well. With me today is a good friend of mine, Stephanie K. She is a fellow podcaster. She hosts the NX 7062 podcast, which if you know what that is, you know what that is. If you don't, it is a Star Trek reference, which makes sense because she is also a huge Trekkie and sci-fi fan, and I'm told an award-winning karaoke singer.
Yes, I actually have won awards for my singing. So
there you go.
I count that. In fact, it was at a bar right back in our old neighborhood. So
which bar?
Philomena's.
Oh, get out. Yeah.
Yeah. I used to do karaoke there all the time. Of course, we're talking pre-pandemic, a lot of stuff, but
yeah. My dad played there a few times. So
I know. I've sung with your dad there a few times.
With my dad. In fact, that brings me to the next question, which is why don't you tell the audience how we know each other?
Oh my God. Because way back in my parents moved into a house that happened to catty corner, share a backyard with your house. We literally grew up together. I have known you since I was 3.
That's it. Yep.
That's it.
I'm kind of juggling. I say what I usually do, and this is only the second interview I've done, so I have no idea what I usually do. But my plan is to sometimes give the guest an opportunity to tell how we know each other, and sometimes I'll do that. And that's exactly right. We grew up, our formative years in South Jersey.
Yep.
And went to high school together and had some friends in common and things like that. And then
choir
connection, right?
Yep.
Kind of went in our different directions and everything and reconnected and been great friends ever since, and connect in many ways. We connect not just with music, which of course we'll talk about, but we also connect as being sci-fi fans and Star Trek fans, which is kind of.
And actors, you're a more established actor than I am, but we both do a little bit of acting.
Yes, we do. That's true.
And we reconnected because your mom gave me your email address back when I went to go see your dad one night, back when he was still doing shows. That's how we ended up reconnecting.
Oh man, I always wondered about that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, back in the 10 grand and a burger days. Remember that?
Yes.
One of your first.
There was a theater company that I helped found. It wasn't my idea. I just was kind of on board with it from the beginning with a good friend of mine who was also my drummer in my band Wreck for many years, Justin the Doll.
Oh, Justin. I remember Justin.
Good guy. It was a great theater company. We did great productions, and then that kind of, and I mean, it's great that was the reason why we reconnected. And then that kind of morphed and went away in its own way, or I went away and ended up co-founding a film company shortly after that.
Mm-hmm.
You were, a pretty big part of for a number of years.
I was, in fact, on my IMDb page, I've got a couple of associate producer credits for a couple of the films that we did together, plus an acting credit, a teeny tiny little acting credit for one of the full-length features we did together. So.
Yeah, and that's a feature that's been distributed internationally and all of that, and I believe to date is the latest film that that company has released. So.
Yeah, I believe the writer of that film is working on something else if you follow her on Facebook. So.
Oh, cool. Well, and good, point here. And I've asked you for this. I try to set up as much as possible to kind of cross promote and all that.
Yep.
So any links you want to share, we'll have them underneath the video for everybody to see.
Okay. Well, my podcast is live every Monday night, and you can find it on Facebook, on YouTube, or on Twitch. Actually, I decided to kind of really branch out. And I'm at NX7062 just about everywhere. So if you go to YouTube and just type in NX7062, you'll find it. Unfortunately, when you're a baby YouTuber, they don't give you a personalized URL. So it's just this very messy link. So I just tell people, if you want to find me on YouTube, just search.
Well, and you know what? We have friends who I'm going to be interviewing in a couple of weeks, probably. They run a band and a show. They're called Hot Glue in the Gun, and they do this Gluey Zoomy show. And one of the things they did on the show was to ask their guests to go and like their YouTube channel, because once you get over a certain number of likes,
Yeah.
change your URL. So anybody out there who's into
Please.
sci-fi, who's into not just sci-fi, but awesome live discussions and awesome special guests.
Yes. Yes.
Seeing a week or two ago, please go over to NX7062, find the YouTube channel and like.
Give me a like.
Yep. Yeah.
Give me a like. Yeah, because it's live, and if you're, it's obviously Star Trek. It's a Star Trek themed. I just told somebody the other day, I go off topic more than I stay on topic. So yes, every show has a topic, but sometimes we just all go off on tangents because I'm live chatting with whoever's there. And it sort of has this lean towards my favorite Star Trek, which is Enterprise. So if I can ever bring it around to Enterprise, that usually happens.
I can attest to that being true. And there are times where I'm amazed that you can bring it back around to Enterprise.
I know. I'll have the guest that I had, Sarah Lofton from DS9. I'm pretty sure I was able to bring her on to Enterprise at some point. So
yeah, you did. And
he's from Deep Space Nine, and I was still able to bring. Yes, because somebody accused me of having a crush on Trip, aka Connor Trenier.
Yeah.
Who knows me, so it's okay.
Now you're not just, and people should know this, and it will eventually connect to music, but you're not just a podcaster. You are pretty deeply involved in things like the conventions, in the community itself. You're part of a group called the Lambda Quadrant, and among all of that, you have met a lot of people in that culture.
I have. I've interviewed. I've gone to Star Trek Las Vegas since 2017, which is an annual thing. Got canceled this year. They tried twice to have it, once in its usual time in August, and then they tried again for December, but it just wasn't safe. So the gap in my Vegas resume is due to COVID. Aiming for it again. And you want to bring it around to music, they have Star Trek karaoke 2 nights a week at the convention. So I have had the most amazing time singing. For anybody out there that knows anything about Star Trek, Enterprise is the only show that had a theme song actually sung. And it was actually written by Diane Warren, who was a prolific songwriter. She wrote If I Could Turn Back Time for Cher is one of her credits.
Yes.
She's incredible. In fact, she was up for an Oscar up against Lady Gaga. For when they were, oh my God, why is the Shallow? Shallow won, but Diane Warren also had a song up against, and I thought if Shallow doesn't win, which we all know it's going to, but if Shallow doesn't win, I would love to see Diane win, just because she's an amazing songwriter. And she wrote this song at first was called Faith of the Heart, and Rod Stewart sang it over the end credits of Patch Adams. And I did not know that until after I kind of got back into Enterprise back in 2016. And I loved the song so much, and I started looking into it and seeing if there was a karaoke version. And I found out it was called Faith of the Heart. Rod Stewart sang it. But then when they decided they wanted it for Enterprise, they changed the title to Where My Heart Will Take Me. And they gave it to a British singer named Russell Watson, who does a better version, because I honestly don't like Rod Stewart. And they used an abbreviated version for the theme, and then I learned the full length version, and I have sung it in Vegas twice with Dominic Keating, who happens to be Lieutenant Malcolm Reed from Enterprise. So I've not only sung at Star Trek conventions, I've sung with the actors from Star Trek.
The Enterprise actors. My mind is now full of questions and things like, and I want to earmark two things. One is music in Star Trek and Diane Warren. But before we get to those, gotta follow up on this. Tell me about your dislike of Rod Stewart.
Don't like his voice. Just nothing resonates with me when I hear him sing. I mean, you know what? Like the song "If You Think I'm Sexy," I think if I heard it from somebody else, I might like it. His voice just does not resonate with me. And there's Survivor. Eye of the Tiger. Yeah. Okay. They have a song. I actually am a Survivor fan, and I have a lot of their stuff. And they actually have a song called "It's the Singer, Not the Song." That's great. When you listen to the music, it's the singer, not the song. And I really believe that. 9 times out of 10, I am all about the original version because that's the first version you hear. That's the version you usually connect with. But there are very few instances where My Heart Will Take Me, one of them, My Maria, another one, which was a hit in the 70s for B.W. Stevenson and then remade in the 90s by Brooks and Dunn. The first time I heard it, I heard Brooks and Dunn. And I liked their version, not realizing it was a remake. And then when I finally did hear the B.W. Stevenson version, it's good. I like it, but I actually like the Brooks and Dunn version a little better.
Because of their voices.
Because I'm huge on harmony. Another song that breaks that mold for me, Hazy Shade of Winter. Originally by Simon and Garfunkel. For the movie Less Than Zero was the Bangles. And their 4-part harmony kicks it into a different level than Simon and Garfunkel.
Their harmony and the production energy and all of that. It's actually kind of crazy you mentioned that because a few episodes ago, I did an entire podcast. I called it the Covers versus Originals Challenge. And I based it on, because I do different versions of this podcast. And one of them is I take a release from my collection and I discuss it and use it as a jumping off point. And the release I used for that Covers versus Originals Challenge was the 12-inch single Hazy Shade of Winter. And
I mean, they're close. I like them both, but the Bangles edge it out. But on the flip side of that, there is a songwriter named Jon Stewart, but he spells it H-N, not like the Daily Show guy. He wrote Daydream Believer. And if he's the one that owns the rights, I will never forgive him for this. He gave it to Anne Murray. I grew up a Monkees fan. I love the Monkees. Daydream Believer, obviously I was in love with Davy Jones, and Daydream Believer was one of my favorite songs. Then in the 80s, I think it was actually 1980, Anne Murray came out with her version of Daydream Believer. It was terrible. First of all, it's one of those songs that it's very hard to flip male to female because it talks about shaving. So it's kind of hard to, yeah. So it's kind of hard to flip it. There you go. And that is what led me down the I don't like Anne Murray road.
Yeah.
And I remember for some reason, Kmart by our house, one place we used to walk as kids because we were back in the day when it was safe to walk anywhere. I walked up to Kmart and I remember things you remember. And I picked up one of her greatest hits cassettes. I think I wanted to see if she was considering Daydream Believer her greatest hit because it did chart for her. So I looked in the back and I read down the list. Half, at least, of that greatest hits album were other people's hits.
Right.
And I'm like, you can cover one or two, but why are you putting them all on your greatest hits album?
Well, I always find that interesting because you have those artists who build their career on signature songs, where that's right. Someone else may have done it, but they made it their own. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Does that and things like that. But then you have those artists who I call stylists, who just take other people's songs and do it in their own style. And it's like you said, if you're a fan of that style and that voice, then that's great. You're probably going to love every cover that they do. But if you're not, and let's say in the case of Anne Murray, respect her, awesome career. not a
Right.
fan, I would find like her version of a song that I enjoy maybe doesn't have the right energy, or it's blander in some way.
Mhm.
And not to take away from her skill. It's just it, like you said, it doesn't resonate.
Well, and if you really want to talk about how people feel about songwriters versus people that sing the songs, there Seth MacFarlane had something to say about that. There's a Family Guy episode with Anne Murray where Stewie falls in love with Anne Murray, gets Brian to fall in love with Anne Murray, and then they go on this quest to find Anne Murray, and they find her. And that's all I'm going to say. But if you like the Family Guy, or you want to see what Seth MacFarlane has to say about this, I would just like look up Anne Murray, Family Guy, however you have to do, because I don't know the season or the episode, but I enjoyed it. If that lets you know how I agree with Seth, and it's hysterical, and I highly recommend it.
Well,
But
yeah, go ahead.
but since we're talking about covers, and okay, so this is my Be Kind mug, which Nick said I always do that with the camera. Be Kind is the tagline. Wait, let me see if I can get, there you go.
There you go.
Of Pop Culture Hero Coalition. It is the first 501c3 anti-bullying nonprofit.
Wow.
It is amazing. I highly recommend supporting them. They are at Superhero IRL all over the internet. But Chase Masterson, who played Lita in the later seasons of DS9, founded it. She is one of the nicest, sweetest, most incredible people that I know. And one of the things I love about her, and something that I've always found kind of I miss, when I was a kid growing up, and I would sit down and watch stuff with my parents, old movies on TV, the actors, the triple threats, the actors who could sing and dance.
Yeah.
I always loved those movies. And Chase Masterson is one of those multi-talented people, and she is an incredible singer. And she did this cover. I found this out in 2016 when I went to a Star Trek convention, and during her panel, she sang Pure Imagination from Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Oh, yeah.
And she gave me chills because of the way she sang that song, because she understood the heart of that song in the same way that Gene Wilder performed it. That whimsical way of thinking and feeling, and she captured that. So does Josh Groban. There are actually 3 versions of that song that I like: Josh Groban, the original Gene Wilder, and Chase's. Yeah. So Chase is just this, she's an incredible person. She's got this charity, but she's also an amazing singer, and I have her CD called Jazz Cocktail and Pure Imaginations. It's all, I think there might be one original song, but they're mostly jazzed up covers of a lot of different songs.
Oh, nice.
And she's an incredibly talented person. And more trivia for you. Yeah. They wouldn't let Sammy Davis play the candy store owner in Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. He was going to sing Candyman, and it was a racial thing, and they didn't let him play. They didn't let him play the guy. And then this guy, this no-name actor dude who was in this, like 2 or 3 scenes in the movie, sang the Candyman song. And Sammy Davis went, well, I'll show them. And he did the song, and he had a #1 hit.
Yeah, my brain could not access the movie version of that, but I can hear Sammy Davis's version right now in my head.
Yeah, exactly. But and I completely forgot that was part of the movie. But then I watched. They re-released it in theaters a couple years ago, and I'm like, I have to go. I love Willy Wonka, so I went and I watched it in the theater, and the guy started saying, I'm like, oh, that's right, this song was for this movie originally. But
yeah, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I'm glad you brought up the charity. I hope people support it. And yes, drink from that mug. For those of you watching on video.
You want one of these fabulous mugs?
Yes.
Go to bekindmerch.org. Bekindmerch.org. My friend Raymond designs all this stuff. So please go. They also have masks.
Excellent. And that you mentioned Chase, and that she's an actor and a singer, multi-talented. I did a podcast a few weeks ago where I talked about talents of famous people that you don't realize, like,
oh yeah,
Tony Bennett, who sadly we find out he's got Alzheimer's now. It has been a painter for decades.
Oh my God, I didn't know he had Alzheimer's. I missed that.
It's sad. I've read a great
That
article
is,
on it. But yes, and the jumping off point I used for that podcast was I own the entire debut album of Sean Cassidy, and
oh, I saw that somewhere on Facebook, I think.
yes, and I talked about how you may have if you know him, you may have known him as a singer, you may have known him as a part of the Hardy Boys or the brother of David Cassidy or whatever, but that he then became a television producer and writer and director, and created some hit shows, and to this day is still in television behind the scenes. It's and I think you being involved in that Star Trek community, you've been able to discover
Yes.
hidden talents. We talked to Sarah Lofton and how he's into music.
Yeah, Sirach. Yeah. Sirach's amazing. And he's into music, and he's designing merchandise for, God, I'm going to get this. Abyssinian something crap. Sorry, Sirach. I can't remember the rest of the website. Oh, but Sirach's designing has a merchandise store that he's running with his sister online, and it's Abyssinian something, and I'm kicking myself for not being able to remember it. But it's funny that you mentioned Sean Cassidy, because I've seen his name pop up in the credits, like producer credits, writer credit, and I'm like, is that the Do Run Run Sean Cassidy? And obviously,
yeah, and that's him. Yeah,
I have the 45. I do not have. I don't have the album. I have the 45 of the Do Run Run.
I think that song was what prompted me to buy the album, and true confession, it came with a poster, and that poster was on my closet door. So
you didn't give it to your little friend around. I would have loved a Sean Cassidy poster.
I don't know where it is anymore. I gotta talk to my mother about that. But getting back to Star Trek and music, the things that you brought up. First of all, Diane Warren, if you people don't know her, look her up. She is a veteran songwriter who I just listened to an interview with her.
Oh wow.
And it turns out that she's been almost 40 years in the business, and the first song that she got successfully produced that became a big hit that she wrote was Rhythm of the Night.
The Barge?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And then of course.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, finish, because I can.
Yeah, good. No, you say what you were going to say. This is your time.
They use that in Moulin Rouge, which is one of my favorite movies outside of science fiction. And again, that's finding out that Nicole Kidman and Ewan McGregor were incredibly multi-talented.
It is, and I love their voices. I especially love Ewan McGregor's voice. And we actually, a cousin of mine who's really into music, who got me into music, certain kinds of music when I was a kid. When we were doing our Facebook Live shows last year, she requested that we do Elton John's "Your Song," but the movie Moulin Rouge version, because she.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I sing the Ewan McGregor version better. The Ewan McGregor version is written better from my voice. I tried singing Your Song once with your dad, and it was the Elton John version, and it just didn't. It didn't click. But there's a karaoke version of the movie version, and that I can do. So.
And so back to karaoke. So you've sung this Diane Warren song, which is the song to Enterprise, and because that's your favorite show, and because it's the only theme that has vocals, it makes sense that you would choose that to sing,
right?
And but it points out something that I have found to be true since before I can even remember, which is how important music is to other forms of media, whether that's film or television or dance or certain types of art installations even. And in particular in sci-fi, I bet you anybody out there, if you think of one, whether it's Star Wars or Star Trek or some favorite show of yours, you probably can hum some part of a theme from a sci-fi movie.
And 9 times out of 10, you can thank John Williams for that. But the Imperial March from Star Wars is one of my favorite movie. But bringing it back to Enterprise, that song is actually so highly contested. because there are people that love it. There are people that hate it. There are people like Star Trek shows don't have themes. They have, they have instrumentals.
Right.
So a lot of people hate that song based specifically on the fact that it has words. Some people hate it because they don't think it fits with the show. It's like, listen to the words. It's talking about having faith and getting into space. The whole show was about having faith and going out into the galaxy for the first time, because the ship in Enterprise was the first one that had warp 5 capabilities that actually allowed humans to explore out past their own galaxy. So the song, in my mind, the song fits. And what happened was, like I said, I have always been a Trekkie, but I started my journey that brought me to this completely immersive point back in 2016 when I went to the 50th anniversary convention that happened to be down the street from me in New Jersey. And I met Connor Chenier and Dominic Keating. And I sang karaoke with them then, and it was We Can Work It Out by the Beatles, and we had so much fun. Nicole DeBoer from Deep Space Nine sang with us. It was just incredibly, amazingly fun. And that's kind of what renewed my Star Trekkiness. And I came home and Netflix had all of Star Trek, so I started binge watching Enterprise. And the first time I heard that song again for the first time in God knows how long, I went, not only do I love it just to love it, but it felt like where I was in my life. So that's what really got me obsessed with learning it. But what was funny, but then as I learned it and then I started getting more involved in the Star Trek community, I find out that it's just people hate that song. Just because it exists as the theme to a Star Trek show, people hate it. And so when I went to Las Vegas for the first time in 2017, Connor and Dominic were hosting a karaoke show. And I was trying to talk Connor into singing with me. And he kept saying, no. I was picking duets, and he's like, forget it. So finally I said to him, what about the theme? And Connor said, I'm not singing that with you. And I said, no, you don't have to sing the theme with me. I've been practicing. I'm like, you don't have to sing the theme with me. I said, but should I do it? And he's like, yeah, why not? I'm like, because people freaking hate it. But he's like, no, you'll be fine. Do it. And every time that I've sung that with him, like, he doesn't sing it with me, but he will defend my right to sing it. So like, she's doing the theme. The first time I did it in 2017, I got up on stage. It was so funny. I got up on stage and Connor's like, she's singing, Where My Heart Will Take Me. And Dominic's like, is that the theme to our show? Connor's like, yeah, she's going to do the theme. And I asked Dominic if he wanted to sing it with me. He's like, no. I'm like, fine, I'm going to do it by myself. By the time I hit the chorus, he was singing with me.
Hey.
So he lied. But he's right. That's the only reason I didn't want to sing it, was because there are people out there that just don't want to hear it.
Well, and I get that in the sense that everybody's got their favorite, and everybody kind of has their idea of what a theme should be. And
right.
It's interesting to me at the time in particular, because if we're all, anybody who's old enough to remember, almost every single television show from, let's say, the late 60s, mid 60s in through the mid 80s or late 80s had a theme song with lyrics.
Exactly.
And even through the 90s with like the Friends theme song and
yep.
like that, or the end credits of Frasier, where Kelsey Grammer sang his own theme, and then that kind of slowly got phased out. It either became instrumental, like
right.
ER was instrumental, whatever.
ER was good. Yeah.
Or it became what's that? What show was that? Was it Dawson's Creek that had that song? I Don't Want to Wait.
Oh yeah. That was just a cut. Yeah, Sarah. What's her name? Yeah.
It became its theme, but it wasn't written to be the theme. So that
right. Meanwhile, the Friends theme became a huge hit.
Right. When Enterprise comes out, that was at a time where shows were not doing that. So
right. Yeah, 2001. Right.
Yeah, like that people would have been like, why are there lyrics in a theme song? That's not supposed to be the way it is. And yeah, that's the only one that's happened with Star Trek. But whether you like it or not, I thought it was kind of a cool thing that they did that.
Yeah.
Because it differentiated that series from the other series.
And I mean, seriously, watch the theme. The entire theme is different. Every other show leading up to it was just spacey stuff. It was literally just shots of the galaxy or in Deep Space Nine's case, shots of the galaxy and the space station. The theme to Enterprise was way more visually thought out because it shows the history of ships named Enterprise. And it goes through like the HMS Enterprise, and then it shows the space shuttle Enterprise. And then I love the fact that they end Enterprise's theme with the shot from the movie First Contact, which is the first warp ship when Zefram Cochrane invented warp drive, for anybody out there that knows what I'm talking about. But it's literally that clip from the movie, because the movie Star Trek First Contact is, to me, the prequel to Enterprise. So
that makes sense. Yeah, I could see why that would be the case.
Oh, it totally is. It's totally the prequel. In fact, James Cromwell was in the first episode. James Cromwell reprised his role from the movie in the first episode of Enterprise.
Oh, I forgot about that. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Do you feel like sci-fi, let's say we'll stick with Star Trek, because if anybody who knows Star Trek can probably hum the original,
right,
theme, or maybe the Next Generation theme or something like that.
I've watched
Discovery, and I enjoy kind of the morphing that they did.
Yeah.
Do you think that that a show like that, let's just say any of those series, any Star Trek series, would be the same without the music?
I don't think anything's the same without the music. I think the music adds a layer. I have 8 discs worth of Enterprise music. Believe it or not, there are actually 8 CDs worth of music for 4. See, that show only ran 4 seasons, and when you listen, because the music adds the mood. And I just think, the suspense of, is the warp drive going to blow? The suspense. There's my favorite scene in all of Star Trek. It has yet to be topped in all of Star Trek, is when Trip Tucker has to climb a rope between 2 ships traveling at warp speed that are like this. And my iPod decided to play that music for me the other day, and it's like, yes, the suspense of watching Trip try, and then the tether's starting to break, and Malcolm's like, hurry up, because he's looking at the stars, and it wouldn't be the same if that music wasn't there to set the mood. So I just think music is essential for anything. I think that layer is essential. But I also want to say, I don't think anybody would really know what a theremin is without the theme of Star Trek, the original Star Trek.
That's brilliant, and I love because that just leads exactly to the next thing I was going to say, which is, yes, and I'll get to it, that I think music is essential for pretty much any visual, any element, television, film. Mm-hmm. I have very strong opinions about when too much music is too much, and
right,
when it gets in the way and everything. But I think that if you can capture the character of a show with a song, let's say a theme song, and then capture, like you said, the mood of a scene with that underlying music, then you're connecting to certain emotional components in a human that are being enhanced by the music that might not be fully conveyed with just the scene itself.
Right. I can even talk. Okay, so here's what you said. Like, sometimes they take it too far or whatever. The flying scene, actually it's called the flying sequence in Superman, in the original Superman movie, when he stops by Lois's and they're interviewing, and she asked him how fast he could fly, and he said, let's find out. Mm-hmm. That music is so beautiful.
I can still hear it.
And you can hear it. I don't think it needed that stupid voiceover of her literally reciting the lines from Can You Read My Mind? I think they should have just left the music. But when you listen to it, you can get it where she's not talking. If you have the soundtrack, there's a piece where she's not talking, and it's because you're listening, and it's like, but then you actually hear in the music that point where she slipped and started falling. The music completely changed, and you don't need her screaming. You don't need anything. You just hear the and you know that's when she slipped and he went diving after her.
Oh wow! See, that's a perfect example of when it's a little too much, right?
Yeah.
And I've found, I think that in sci-fi, in most cases, there's a lot more leeway to what you can do with music than in traditional films. And to me, my take on that is because hey, it's very action oriented, and there are things you can do to punch up that action. If it's done
Mhm.
well, you can create, even to me, like the greatest composers on the top, they're conveying the action with the music. And then underneath that, there might be some underlying emotion of like fear or apprehension with the certain character that they're focusing on. And that's that kind of multi-layered thing. But even beyond that, like the theremin's a perfect example. Most television shows tend to stick with what works. Most
Right.
everything. Tend to think whatever's popular, whatever they know has been done before, they're going to do because it fits. It's been proven that it works.
Mhm.
Sci-fi, in many cases, producers have the opportunity to branch out a little, to experiment a little, to throw in things that hadn't maybe ever been used before, or have been used sparingly, or in another media, not at all television or film. And the weirdness, and there are a couple versions of the original Star Trek theme with voices and the theremin and
Yep.
stuff, is a perfect example of how sci-fi music can often be more experimental than a traditional film music.
Yeah, and I mean, what more recognizable notes in science fiction are there than from Close Encounters?
Oh,
Do 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 do. I mean, somebody says that, and everybody knows exactly what you're referring to.
that the fact that the aliens themselves you needed to use music as a form of communication with the humans,
Yeah.
is it just shows, and I mean that's Spielberg, of course, but we can even go to somebody like Scorsese, who every single film he does, he's such a music fan, and he's done music movies
Hmm.
that like it's such an important component. And he, whether it's original scores, I don't know as well of his song, but music, but of his movies, but the songs he chooses are always so perfect for everything he does.
As okay, so here's another link. Rob Sherman, who you know as somebody that wrote a play that you did a few years ago.
Yeah.
And I know him because he wrote this amazing episode of Doctor Who called Dalek, which was in Christopher Eccleston's season in 2005. And it was about the doctor pops in Utah, in this bunker in Utah sometime in the very near future. And there's this bazillionaire that collects artifacts from all over the galaxy, but he's an asshole about it. They find the doctor and Rose, and they take him to the guy, and the doctor's talking to the guy, and obviously the doctor knows more about alien artifacts than this human does, and he picks something up off of his desk and he starts playing with it, and the doctor's like, no, give it to me, and he takes it, and he puts it in the palm of his hand, and he's like, it's a musical instrument. And it just responded to like the lightest of touches, and he's holding it in his hand and he played it. And it's like, again, music is literally universal, because he's playing this alien musical instrument for this guy. This guy's thinking it's a weapon. He wants to know how it works. What is it? It's a musical instrument.
There's actually been books written about how um, not every element of music, but certain very core elements of music could really be called possibly the only universal language. And yeah, different cultures might consider different types of music to hold different emotions than we do, but underneath that there's a certain type of communication that music does that
Right.
transcends written and spoken language.
There's an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation which is incredibly popular, which I don't like, only because I'm not a huge Jean-Luc Picard fan, not the way some people, like that whole Kirk Picard thing. I'll take Captain Kirk any day of the week. Archer is my favorite, but I will take Captain Kirk any day of the week. But there's this amazing episode of TNG called The Inner Light that a lot of people like, and it literally focuses around music, because these aliens do something with Picard. They like basically kidnap his consciousness and make him think that he's living another life. And in this other life, he plays the flute. And so this whole episode, throughout this whole episode, it's Picard playing the flute. So
I remember that episode so well, and it is one of my favorites. And
sorry.
And I remember the flute. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think to me, look, I don't need everything to have a component of music. Everybody's
Mm-hmm.
multiple interests, but because I constantly think in terms of music, and have that certain connection to it. To me, anything that is able to incorporate music in that way, it just takes it to another level.
Well, for me, my life isn't about music per se, but I am one of those people, I can't sit in a room if there's nothing. I don't do dead silence.
Wow.
And if I can't watch TV because whatever it is that I'm doing, I have to have music. When I was back in school a couple years ago, whenever I had to just sit and read a chapter or just read, I had my Amazon playing. I found I couldn't listen to music with words and concentrate on what I was reading. So I put together a Spotify playlist of Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who has some really great music too. Doctor Who, and some other, Xena, I think was in there because Joe DeLuca is a really good composer too. I liked what he did with the Xena and Hercules. So I put all of that together. So I had this complete instrumental playlist that I would just sit and study to, because I can't read. I can't stand it when it's dead quiet. I need something. So I loved that. I still have it. Like if I need some background music, my Enterprise playlist.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I like that you say that music is not kind of your central thing, but one of the reasons why I thought that interviewing you for my, music centric podcast,
right,
was because to me, music is not just about the people who create it. It's about the people who absorb it as well.
Right.
And I've talked about this in other podcasts where there are people for whom they don't care what's on musically. They don't really choose music. If something's on, it's there. That's fine.
Right.
I don't know how to relate to them on that level.
Me either. Yeah.
And you are someone I've known for a while, but I've known, music for you is a passion.
It is.
The things that you listen to and the way that you were once involved in the music industry as representing a country artist,
Yep.
These connections to music, whether it's through that or sci-fi or the karaoke or your love of the Monkees, which I've, known about for a very long time, that kind of are really a part of who you are.
Yeah. And remember back in high school, I used to play the bagpipes. It's the only instrument I ever actually learned was the bagpipes.
Wow, I did not remember that.
Marching band. We had at the time, we were one of only 3 marching bands in the country that had a bagpipe unit because we were the Highland Tartans.
Yep. And
I learned how to play the bagpipes. So I do know how to play the bagpipes. I can pick things out on a piano because I kind of I could do goofy stuff. I could do the theme to MASH because it's ridiculously easy. Suicide is Painless is ridiculously easy. But my grandparents had an organ, and whenever we went up to visit them, I used to get bored. I used to go in. It was just a little more like an electric keyboard. It wasn't like a big grand thing. It was just like a little electric keyboard. But the neat thing about this was it had a little strip above the keys, and it told you what note you were playing, but it also had numbers because the sheet music they had was number coded. So you didn't have to know this is an A minor, this is an F sharp. All you had to do was go, okay, 12, 13, 11, which is my country tis of these, 12, 12, 13, 11. Could not freaking tell you the notes, but I can tell you the numbers, and I can sit at a piano and pick it out. Because that's what I used to do. I used to go in and I just learned to play by numbers.
I used to teach music, and I found that some of the kids could learn how to read the notes very easily, and other ones never quite really learned. And part of it was they played by ear, and it worked out well. But there are a lot of different ways to write down music and what the notes are, and
right.
How you can read music is not that important to me.
Well, it's funny. And one of the classes I was taking when I went back to school was a Beatles class. Believe it or not, it's funny because I needed an art requirement to get my degree. And I thought, you know what, I'll take an art class. Let's expand my horizons. And I got a C on my first paper. I'm thinking, I don't get C's. This doesn't. And the teacher gave me some critiques, but she critiqued that paper after I had handed in my second paper. because she was slow. This had nothing to do with, it's like, okay, I thought I did a pretty good job, so let me do the second paper and hand it in. And then I'm like, you know what? I can't deal with a teacher that can't do this. And I didn't want to affect my GPA with some stupid random course, so I dropped it. Come to find out that music is an art requirement. Music fits. We had a Beatles class. I'm like, why am I trying to take art? Why don't I just take a Beatles class? But then, of course, my dad, I've been listening to Beatles since before I was born, thanks to my father. And basically, I was told if I didn't get an A in this class, I would be disowned. So unfortunately, but it started with like music, like actually like learning notes and music theory. And I just wasn't wrapping my head around it. I was able to get through the first little bit. My dad even helped me. For a while, he was a music major at Penn State. And he was trying to help me. He goes, this is why I quit. He's like, this is why I changed majors. He played the tuba in the marching band, but to actually be a music major was a little more intense. Yeah. So he's like, this is why I quit. I'm like, I can understand that. So, but I was doing pretty well after I got past like the mechanics of it, and it just started talking about the music of the Beatles and understanding where they were coming from in their theories and their evolution, all of that. But then I got to having to write my last paper, and it was comparing 3 songs. And I knew that to get a decent grade on that paper, I was going to have to start with the music theory stuff again. I went to you, and I was like, I need you to help me analyze 3 Beatles songs. I even asked my teacher. I said, listen, I've got a friend. He happens to be in a Beatles cover band, by the way. If I ask him for some advice and I get some of his input on what I should say, and I cite him, is that okay? And I got permission to ask you, because I'm like, I can analyze the music. I can analyze, as far as listening, I can analyze the lyrics and tempo. But when it came down to other specifics, I needed your help.
Well, and I liked how you, one of the songs you mentioned how it had like a bluegrass component and all that. So
that would have been Rocky Raccoon. Yeah, Rocky Raccoon was very country.
Yeah.
It was almost a country parody. Like Paul was just like, let me try this country thing that's so big over on the other side.
Storytelling, right? But about a raccoon, yeah.
But yeah, that's also still on all of my Beatles songs. Rocky Raccoon is my favorite.
And Beatles is kind of where we converge the most in terms of our tastes in music, which is
yeah, because your dad. I remember we used to sit out. Remember in the summers, we used to go hang out at your house. This is back in the day when kids actually went outside and rode their bikes and did all that outdoorsy stuff. I remember we were either getting yelled at to move away from your house because your dad was sleeping because he worked at night, or we could sit and listen to him practice upstairs. Yep. So those are some of my fondest memories. Yeah, I just remember your mom going, your father's sleeping, go to the other side of the street.
Oh, all the time. Yeah, and he still sleeps late, and even though he's not working as much anymore. But I can picture that piano room in my head with the window open and,
Yeah, and the stand-up piano on the opposite side of the room.
Yep.
See, our houses were exactly the same. The difference is that I had my own room and my sister had her own room, and my sister's room and your dad's office were the same room on the floor plan. So,
right, that makes sense.
Yeah, so I can see that in my head because it was my sister's room. So the window's on one side and your dad's piano was on the exact opposite side of the room.
So you see how far back our music history goes, people. You understand this?
Yeah.
It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you about all this. Not that we don't talk other times, but this is special.
And it is special.
Made it even more special. Thank you for being here and for talking with me about everything.
Thank you for having me.
Don't forget, everyone, she is a podcaster too, and her show is NX7062. Look it up. Please go over to her YouTube channel and subscribe and all of that good stuff. And like I said, I'm going to make it easy. I'm going to have any link that Stephanie wants to share right here along with this interview. And again, my thanks to Stephanie and my thanks to all of you for listening. If you're on a podcast streaming service or watching, if you're on YouTube or elsewhere, or being a Patreon patron, thank you so very much. Clicking and subscribing and sharing and donating your blood. I don't know what else it is that you do. But thank you for all of that. And thank you for being here with me and with us, because as always, my objectives are music, conversation, and connection. And I will see you next time.